Check the mic and make sure.
So welcome everyone to the group chat brought to you by OVERMUGGED. I'm Darrell and I'm here with Xin Wei. Once again, this is another episode that we recorded before. But yes, the files were lost in transition. Yes, that's why. Okay, but today's topic will be very timely for many of us, which is how do you prepare for your upcoming mid-year exams. Now, mid-year exams are just around the corner. I think for myself, I'm doing Sec 4, mainly my students. So I think it's around early May. So that's coming around the corner. We have maybe around April to prepare for it, depending on when this podcast goes out. Now, I think mid-year is one of the important checkpoints that you can really see where you are and what are the areas of improvements that you need to make. Of course, preparation for mid-year needs to come in early. And I think that, now is literally the best time to start. Xin Wei, for yourself, what are your plans for your duties, for mid-years?
Yeah, we already started preparing already. I already tell my students, I tell all my students that y'all better start preparing now, because my students mainly is first week of May, like their mid-year exam. So it's as of recording date, we are recording now is 29 March. So it's about a month away, like the whole of April. But it's actually not a lot of time, given that I think because my students are mainly Sec 4, I don't really have Sec 3 students. So mid-year is actually the first exam that it will have quite a long list of chapters, because usually all the WAs is like 2-3 chapters only, and then last Sec 3 end of year is only half the chapter. Some of my students, this exam is all chapter except for the last. So to be fair, it's the first exam that like they have to study a lot of content. So it's the kind of the first exam. So it's very important to start early, because if you start a bit later, you're going to feel like you have no time to finish all content. Then you have to skip some chapters, which is very dangerous because you never know what will come out. Yeah.
So for my own group tuition, we have already started for mid-year exam prep. Our entirety of April is dedicated to that. So we're like revising older chapters, recapping some of the stuff, and trying exam papers. We'll go on to the what you should do after. But I think with the recent news, MOE actually announced that there won't be any more mid-year exam. My first thought was that it's probably just going to be replaced with a WA. Okay, but from a student/tutor POV, right? I think removing mid-year exam would make sense if you are P1, P5, maybe Sec 1, Sec 3. But I think in your national exam year for PSLE and O-level, right, I sincerely think that mid-year exam does a lot more good than harm. Now, you might feel very discouraged by your mid-year exam results if you don't do well, but I think that could be really the prompt for you to work hard. It depends on how you take it, right? So I think mid-year exam gives you a very realistic take on where you are at and what are the areas you need to work on. So for me, the removal of mid-year exam, I don't think of it as something that, is beneficial or anything. It's just, I feel it's a bit of a token move, MOE is transitioning, blah, 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 blah. But I think it doesn't really change much, especially if your national exam is still there and you still need to do well. So to me, it doesn't change much. Xin Wei, what's your thoughts on this upcoming development?
I absolutely hated the idea, because as I mentioned, Sec 4, actually I agree, for Sec 1, Sec 2, and P1 to P4, mid-year exam actually don't have a lot of meanings. Removing them actually, maybe it removes some stress from the students. But for the Sec 4 students, mid-year exam is, like I mentioned, the first exam that you get so many topics, right? So it is a very good reflection of the amount of content you need to handle before O-level, because it's not just one subject. There are so many other subjects, and they're all long lists of chapters. If you don't do it during mid-year, that means that the exam that you're gonna have this kind of practice of a lot of content, is prelims. That is 2-3 months before O-level. But mid-year is usually 4 months before O-level. So mid-year, even though you really like what Darrell say, you screw up, you feel bad, you feel very dejected, but at least you have time to work on it. If you work very, very hard after mid-year, it's still possible. But prelims, the time is super tight. Yeah, so I don't like this idea.
Basically, from prelim to your O-level, it is less than 2 months, I believe.
Yes.
It is more of you just get a reality check and then you just go in. Maybe you improve by a bit, but not much time left already. I think I really believe that mid-year is there for, especially on national exam year, for good reasons. So for students this year that are taking a mid-year exam, I strongly encourage you to take it seriously. Don't give it like, oh, mid-year anyhow lah, like whatever, last minute. No, I think you should really go and properly prepare for it. Then you do a real reality check. Don't put in half bit effort and say that, yeah, I could have done better. Wow, careless this, careless that. No, because the next time you get to try is your prelim, and your prelim after that, you have no more chance. It's just your O level already or your A level already. So take your mid-year exam seriously. Now, I think going on to the more practical aspect on how you can prepare for it, I think step one is to familiarize with your newer topics. That means these are the topics that you've been learning in February, March, and April, topics that you have just learned this year. And usually these are the topics that are more difficult. So I'm speaking more for J2s and Sec 4s in the sense that usually schools go with the easier stuff in your first year, like Sec 3 and J1, and then they build up on those topics with the newer stuff in Sec 4. So these are the topics that you can expect to be more difficult and with a higher likelihood of coming out, because schools really want you to get accustomed to these question types. Now, for these questions, I think it's more important to focus on your content first. Make sure you get your shit right. Then you go and try some practice. No point jumping into practice when you don't even know what you're talking about. And I think this is also a good time for you to do a sense check whether there's any doubts and clarifications. It might be a good time to start getting those doubts cleared with your teachers or wherever you can ask for help. I think that will be important. Xin Wei, for yourself, your group tuition, is that a key focus?
Actually, I do not give my students a choice. I feel like you just need to get all topics in, man. Like, of course, the newer topics are very important. But if you don't revise your old topic now, right, when are you going to revise your old topic? Right? Like, it's just, I feel like the most ideal situation is you need to study all of them, because this is your chance to test yourself whether you can handle this amount of content or not. Because that is your O level, the amount of content you need to handle in O level. And actually more, because for bio, usually school will exclude like the last chapter, ecology, because ecology damn long, and school usually don't have time to teach before mid-years. Which is okay, right? Just one chapter less, but it's quite realistic for O level content already. But I do agree, if you really don't have time, maybe in terms of like likelihood of coming out in mid-year exam, maybe it's a newer topic. Then again, going back to the point of actual O level, it is not the newer topics. It is like average, like it depends. All chapters are of equal possibility of coming out. So ultimately, all chapters are important lah. Yeah.
So what I do with my students is that we will spend time to recap the newer topics, right? But I think what's part of the plan as well in April is to go and look back at the older topics in Sec 3, because a lot of the things you feel like, I know this key one, then suddenly you try and do, right, you actually forgot all of it already. Then that means you're completely wasting whatever you studied in Sec 3 or in J1. That's the worst thing that could happen, right? You're throwing away all the progress you have made. So actually mid-year is the best time for you to go and claw back on all those knowledge that you have thrown away, then now try to repackage it and get it all together with the new content. So like Xin Wei said, by the time you come O level, it doesn't matter whether it's Sec 3 or Sec 4 topic, everything can be tested and will be tested. So I think mid-year is the time for you to really try to load up on all of the content that you've studied so far, and make sure that when you do the paper, you're able to answer from all topics, not just some of the topics that you're stronger in. And with that being said, I think it's super important, if you have the access to or the resources to do so, go and try some mid-year exam papers. I think that's a very good way for you to do a sense check. So when I say do your mid-year exam papers, I mean do it, see which are the questions that you're getting wrongly or questions you're not confident about. Then use that as sort of like a screener test. Then you're like, okay, I'm weak in topic 1, 3, and 8, then you can go back to those topics and recap again. So I think using the exam paper to sift out your areas of weakness will be a very effective way of revising. Because if the topics you're already strong in, you know your shit, right? Just leave it, right? You already know what you're doing. Focus on your weaker topics. I think that would really help to boost your mid-year exam results.
Yeah, that's very true. Because I think doing those papers, you will realize that, because like now my group tuition doing practice paper, right? You realize that some people retain a lot of things from Sec 3. Some people retain like close to nothing from Sec 3, and that is like, but they know the Sec 4 topics well because it's very recent, like time wise. So in fact, their weaker subjects are, the weaker topics are the Sec 3 topics. So they should spend more time there. And then some people are like, oh, they actually reading quite well from Sec 3. So Sec 3 just need a bit more touch up. Then they can spend more time like practicing for Sec 4 topics. Yeah, so it really depends. I think individually different students have different strength and weakness. Like you have to go and find out yourself. Yeah.
I think for those who are doing this alone, like you don't have tuition or anything, it's perfectly fine. I think what you have to do right now is to set very realistic revision goals and targets. What I mean is you have to plan your time ahead, because you know when your mid-year exam is. Honestly, you're left with what, like 4-5 weeks at most, right?
Yes, at most 4-5 weeks.
And there's like 4-5 weekends, and bro, that's not a lot of time, man. Especially if your CCA is like ongoing right now, competition season and stuff. It's really not a lot of time. So you really want to go and sit down, plan out your time. There's so many subjects you have to study for. I know some of my Sec 4s, they also have like Chinese O-level coming soon, like your mother tongue papers in May or something. Then they are all like dying about it. So there's really a lot of things you have to plan in advance. So you don't like bottleneck everything till the last weekend before your mid-year, before you go and like go all out, right, and burn out. No, that's not the point. So, right. So set realistic goal by when do you need to revise what? And don't be too overly ambitious about it, but be realistic about it. Then I think progressing towards your mid-year might feel less stressful. Now, something else that I like to add on, right, is that if you have doubts for certain chapters, for example, chemistry, right, one of the most common one, electrolysis, like nobody knows what's going on, right? But I think these are precisely the time frame, right, in April before your mid-year to go and ask your teacher questions or go online, look for resources, right? OVERMUGGED, we have plenty of free notes. Go and take a look at it. I think that is when you go and make sure that all your question mark, right, you can cross them out to minimize those as much as possible. And I think one of the most important things to do, right, is to make sure that you don't accumulate doubts. The more doubts you accumulate, it snowballs. You don't understand this, don't understand that side, you don't understand anything. I think that's also very applicable for math. So you really want to build your foundation, right, and not let things snowball in case you die afterwards. Anyway, Xin Wei, I just wanted to check with you, right? So we talked so much about mid-year, right? But to you, right, as a tutor, right, what's the purpose of mid-year?
Purpose of mid-year is a checkpoint.
And maybe after, right?
It's a checkpoint. Oh, I think it's a checkpoint. And I think for all exam, right, I always tell my students, like my tuition kids, that every time sometimes they will be like, oh, I didn't do well for this WA. I didn't do well for this common test. I'll be like, do I care? I don't. I really don't care. I really don't care how you did. Because for O-level, all we care about is the actual O-level result, right? You can get all A's, but if you screw up during O-level, your O-level script is just a B there. But you can get B all the way, right? And you really study very hard, you eventually get A. All you leave behind is an A for the subject, correct? So actually, all these subject, all this grade, right? I think it's a checkpoint. Of course, it's still important, right? It means that how prepared are you at that point? How prepared are you to answer this paper? But after knowing that mark, I really don't care anymore. I think it's about moving forward. Through the paper, you realize what is your weaker topic, like what Darrell said, like you can answer, you are confident about this, like you don't feel good about this chapter, then you know that this chapter you really have to go and like revise them more, do more practice question on those chapters. And some people maybe it's just like, oh, I thought I know everything, but when I answer questions, like answering technique, this is the most common for bio. It's like, I know, but I just don't get the keywords. Then you know that your problem is not understanding, but your problem is memorizing the keywords and answering technique. So these are very common things that will come out only during exam, because as you are revising, you feel like, oh, I understood. I really can understand what is going on, the processes, what is happening in fertilization, everything. But when you have to answer questions or maybe like application question, then you choke. I think this highlights things that you need to work on moving forward, and you should be you should try to identify those and then face those issues. Yeah, I think that is the point of mid-year.
For me as a tutor, when I get back mid-year exam papers, right, the score, like I say, doesn't matter. You get like damn good score, I'll be like, good job, right?
Good job.
Whatever. Next, moving on. If you don't do well, I'll like, okay, moving on. It's like my point is like, don't get too high, don't get too low. Just keep your course. But I think the purpose of the mid-year exam is to really clarify what you need to work on during June holidays. It becomes very clear through your mid-year exam paper where your areas of weaknesses are at and what needs to be addressed. Right now, I think what you need to take away from mid-year is precisely that. So don't take your mid-year lightly. But after you get your result, don't take it too seriously as well, right? At the end of the day, it's your final grade at your national exam that truly matters. Even then, your grades don't define you. So try your best. If you're doing something, just do your best, right? But don't be too like, oh, it's like life and death. No, it's not.
It's not.
Okay.
You need to like start studying during June. That's all it matters, man. June holiday.
I think if you can instill the urgency in you, it will be good. Okay, now on to more of like more realistic things that will be happening. So, as Overmark, we always try to host events to help you guys out. So this is just a quick shout out. We will be organizing mid-year exam revision packages, which means just to really help you prepare. I think it's the 1.5 hour to 2 hour session. So the tutors will be online. It will be a webinar format whereby you can just come in and just listen and go through revision together. I'll be trying to get the tutor team to maybe share some questions that, tend to come up a bit more in mid-year to discuss some of the answering techniques and stuff. So I thought it'd be great if you want to join us. You can grab your friends to come along, how we run things. And more importantly, after the mid-year exam, at Overmark, we always do our crash courses too. So we'll be hosting our June crash courses as well. So if there are like certain topics that you're weaker at, you can try to look up for if there's a crash course for it. I think more information will be online in May or something. But I think focus on your mid-year first. We have those online mid-year exam packages coming up. So don't miss those. Xin Wei, what will you be doing for bio then?
For bio, maybe just practice questions or like putting up practice questions and then just answering technique, I guess. For bio, I think if someone is able to like clear the content part really, right? Okay, some people are still stuck at content. So that one really, I unfortunate to say this, is really like up to like very individual effort. Like if you can go and like sit down, memorize and everything, right? That's very important. But then answering technique is something that can be improved, like can work on. And then with help, right? Once you master the technique of answering techniques, do a lot of practices, right? You really get better and you'll be able to like answer very straight to what the question requires.
Yeah, I think for me, I'll just do like very surface level content revision. I actually want to like do a breakdown on how to approach like more difficult questions and stuff. We'll see. Okay, but anyway, we come to the end of today's podcast. We hope that on your journey towards your mid-year exam, we provided some important tips on how to prepare, and more importantly, how do you think about and approach mid-year exam as an important milestone check. And I think with that, we come to the end of the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe, and stay tuned for our next video. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
It sound right, boy.